Well, hello, welcome again to a reading through of Odyssey Book 4, and I got into the middle of the speech of Menelaus to Telemachos and his friend who've just arrived and had dinner. So Menelaus continues, I finished at line 100, continues, Al empes pantas men oduromenos kai akuon. Polakis en megaroisi kathemonois he meteroisi. So take the second bit first. So oftentimes, Polakis, sitting in the hall, in our halls, nevertheless, I was on oduromenos, grieving or lamenting, and akuon, another word for grieving. So I was lamenting and grieving all of them. Aloti men togo frena terpamai. Now we get a nice aloti men and aloti de. So at one time, literally I turned over my mind to grief. Terpamai can mean to, in fact, to give pleasure. So perhaps I turned my mind to grief, and at other times, once again, I ceased from it. Ipseros decoros crueroio gooio. Ipseros has the sense of quick or sudden, and there's no verb in this sentence, so we have to supply something like comes. So, quick or sudden, choros, excess of cold lamentation, understand, comes. The grammar in this section is a little bit odd because I think Menelaus has become very emotional at this point as he remembers all the terrible things that happened at Troy and all the friends that he lost. And so that kind of sense of emotion in Homer's often, fits in with grammar that's slightly odd, and so we get no verb in this sentence. Tone pantone utoson oduramai ikonumenos per os henos. So I lamented, but in regard to all of them, I did not lament so much, although vexed. This is that use of pair with a participle, very common in Homer, would be kai pair in later Greek. So although vexed, I did not grieve over all of them to such an extent as over henos, one of them. Hos who, now the te I think is connected with the kai here. So apek thyre, something like who makes hateful makes hateful to me both sleep and edodane and food, and then in apposition with the moi, for me thinking about him. So the verb here is mena'amai, if you're looking it up, mena'amai, and so in this omega there's a contraction of an alpha in here. So he laments, although he's vexed, he does not lament all of them equally, but this one particular person who makes hateful both sleep and food to me as I think of him. Epe utis, now utis like udes in Homer, since none of the Achaeans emoge sen, from mogio, to suffer, such things as Odysseus suffered, and ereto. Now I think this is a middle from iro, aorist middle from iro, to take upon oneself, and so to undertake. So it's something like, since none of the Achaeans laboured so many things as Odysseus laboured and undertook. To da emelin autocadia essesthai. Now this is the future from the verb to be. Melo has some funny uses. It has the sense of to be likely. In later Greek it means to be about to. Homer, and it takes a future infinitive still. often has the sense in Homer of to be likely. So it's literally cares. We mustn't forget the ara here, which is quite useful. That's something like accordingly or in fact. For cares were, it's an imperfect, were in fact likely to be about to occur for him. So perhaps about were likely to attend him, literally to be for him. Emoidakos aien alaston kenu. Now, alaston, alpha provative, the last, or the las here is connected with lanthano, to forget, in the middle. But continually there's akos, grief, which is alaston, unforgettable, or perhaps unforgotten or unforgettable grief, continually for me. Grief over kenu, over that man. So again, there's no verb here. So there is continuously unforgetting grief of that man for me. Hopos de deron apoikatai. Now, funny use of hopos de here. I think it must have the sense of like hopos, like hottie. So perhaps because, in fact, he has been absent deron for a long time. Uditi idmen from oida, nor do we know anything. Now we would expect a sort of weather or something, but we just get soe. He indeed lives, or he has died. So again, the grammar's slightly funny here, but the meaning's very clear. So something like, since in fact he's been gone for a long time, we do not know anything, in particular whether he lives or whether he in fact has died. Perfect from Thnesco. Odurontai nu pu auton laertis tha hogeron kai ekifron Penelopia Telemachos the honle peneon gegoot any oiko. Now the poo is indefinite, so it's probably something like perchance or possibly. And then we get a list of people: the old man Laertes, and Ekiphrone Penelope. Ekiphrone probably, well, there's a debate about exactly what this means, but it's probably something like prudent or discreet, one who holds things in her mind. So she's not a gossip. So she's prudent or discreet. They are perchance lamenting over him. Now we get this weak no. The poo is enclitic, puts its accent back onto here. This is that weak nun, probably just then. So perchance then, the old man Laertes and prudent Penelope are lamenting him. And then it's kept over by enjambment. We get this lovely Telemachos there, and Telemachus, who of course is standing right in front of him, whom he left being a young boy, on being very young, in the house. So Telemachus was still a child when Odysseus left. Hos phato to dara patros huv himeron orsi go oyo. And thus he spoke, and now this is a little bit tricky here, I thought, and so it's for him, that is Telemachus, orse, he stirred, so the subject of this I think is Menelaus, so he stirred up a desire. The hoof probably goes with the, as a preverb with the verb here, so he stirred up desire for lamentation, for weeping, for his father, so weeping of his father, so for his father, to, for him. So he, Menelaus, stirred up for him, Telemachus, a desire for to weep, a desire for weeping for his father. Dacru dapoblepharon kamadis bali patros kusas. And having heard this, ballet is from ballad, cast or to throw, but here it's just, I think, shed. So he shed a tear from his eyelids. The blepharon is the nominative, from his eylids, kamadis, to the ground. So it's having heard about his father, I think. He shed a tear from his eyelid, from his eyes, we'd say, literally the eyelids, to the ground. And then anascone, from Anna and echo, this is an aorist, so having held up with both his hands a purple or perhaps dark kleinon, so this is cloak, and ophthalmoin, this is a jewel here, it's something like around his eyes, so covering his eyes. So having held up with both hands this dark cloak over his eyes. Noesin de Menelaus, and Menelaus spied him, he noticed him, min for auton. And Memorik said de paeta cataphrena kai catathumon. And this is a trope you get a lot in Homer, where the particular person has got two options and they think about the two options and try and decide which one they're going to do. Now, they uses this verb memorizdo, this is the aorist here, so it means he was divided. So he was divided then in his mind and in his heart. Either, we get A and A, either that, this is this optative here from ERO, that he might allow, he himself, that's Telemachos, it's a slightly emphatic use, you've got min and auton, that he might either allow him to make mention of his father, literally call to mind, perhaps make mention of his father. So in other words, Menelaus must at this stage know that this is Telemachos in front of him. He can tell this by the tear that he's dropped. Or, prota, adverbial here, or first of all, he might ask each thing in turn, and it's strengthened by the X, this aereo here, denotative, or he might perhaps thoroughly inquire of all he might thoroughly inquire, I think that goes with the next verb. So either firstly he might thoroughly inquire and make trial of each thing in turn. Hekasta. Heos hotalth homaine kataphrena kai katathumon. Heos, for the later Greek, it would be heos. Here we get the long eta rather than the short epsilon, and we get an omicron rather than omega, but it's just like heos. So while he, hormino, is to turn something over in one's mind or to debate, so while he was cogitating tauta on these things, kataphrena kai katathumon, same expression we had a couple of lines up, in his mind and in his heart. So while all that's going on, ek Helene thalamoia thu odios hupsorophoio. So Helen, the main verb is here, eluthen. Eluthen is an aeolic form for aelthon, or aelthen here from Urkamai. It's just another form, it's fairly common in Homer, but it's a example of an aeolic form. You get some of these in Homer. So Helen came from her bedroom, which was centred and had a high roof, like to Artemis, who has a golden distaff. The adjective here is krous e lakatos. Now, of course, she is feminine, but this is a compound, so it's a two-termination adjective. Now, a distaff is, it's like a spindly thing with an end on it, and you wrap wool around it, and it's used, of course, in weaving. So you can look up distaffs and get a picture of one if you like. So, like to Artemis with the golden distaff, and she's accompanied by 3 different women. So Adraste, along with her, accordingly, as you might expect, Adraste placed the well-made Clysiane. This is from Clysia. It's like a seat. It's connected with perhaps almost lounge. It's connected with klino, the verb klino, to lie on, to incline. Eutukton, the tuk here is from tuko, same root as tuko, well made. So Adraste placed, so along with her, Adraste placed the well made seat, and Alcippe was carrying the tapeta. This is from tapes. It's something like a rug. So Alcippe was carrying the rug, which is made of soft wool. The rug made of soft wool. So there's the first 2 mentioned, and Greek always likes to do things in 3s, as you see commonly in Homer, and here's the 3rd person mentioned. And Phulo, Fere, imperfect from Pharaoh, was carrying the silver talaron. Now the talaros is a basket, which, ton for hon, Alcandri had given to her. Alcandri, the daughter of Polybus, who, and Ni is an epsilon elided here from Nial, who used to dwell in Egyptian Thebes. There's various Thebes mentioned in Homer. This is Egyptian Thebes. Hothi, where Pleistoctematos, the greatest number of possessions lie in the house. So we would say, in whose house perhaps there lies the greatest number of possessions. Something like that. It's literally where the greatest possessions lie in houses. Menelaus, and he, this is this Polybos, gave to Menelaus 2 silver asaminthus. Now, we haven't had that word before. It's silver bathtubs. And these nouns with nthos in them and so on, like Corinthos, the name of Corinth, and there are other examples. This is one of the main ones. These are probably pre-Greek words, so these may be Pelasgian words or pre-Greek words with the nth. The nth is not a natural combination of syllables in Greek. So he gave to Menelaus 2 silver bathtubs, and now doius is literally double, but it just means 2 tripods, so double tripods or 2 tripods, perhaps a pair of tripods, and 10 talents of gold. Again, everything comes in 3s in Homer, so there were 3 servants and there were 3 gifts from Polybos. Choris, and apart from that, moreover, his Alakos, his wife, Pore, provided. You only get this basically in this form. There is a later word, porisdo, to provide, but Pore is quite common in Homer, just meaning he gave, he provided. So, his wife provided to Helen Kalimadora, beautiful gifts. And I think we're going to get 3 of these as well. She gets the crucier. Now here's that alakate is the word. It means a distaff. So it's a first declension. This is accusative here. It's a first declension feminine noun. And there's the main verb here, opasen. So she gave a golden distaff and a talaron that was mentioned earlier. This is the basket, and it's a special basket. It's hypokuklon. It's got wheels underneath. So we might say in English, one that's got casters, these wheels underneath. And that was silver. And it was, so she only gets 2 gifts, I think, here, does she? Yep. So she gets the golden distaff and the basket that's got wheels underneath, the silver one. Cruso epikalia kekraanto. This is a funny verb. This is from the verb krino, to fall, to finish. And this is a pluperfect, I think. Looks like a pluperfect middle, I think. So it's like our word finished on the kalia, on the lips, literally. So that'll be the top of it. Cruso with gold. So finished about the top with gold. Ton de hoi amphipolos phulo protheka perusi. So Phulo, the Amphipolis, the servant girl, carrying it, placed it beside her. That's our hoi for our te in this case. And it was bebus menon. This is agreeing with the ton. This is from the verb buo, to stuff full of. This is a perfect passive participle. So stuffed full of. Nematos, it's connected with the verb neo, to spin. And so what you spin is yarn. And the askoitoio, genitive. Asketos is something like, cleverly wrought, cleverly made. Probably here I'll just translate all of it by finely, so stuffed full of, so this basket is stuffed full of finely spun yarn. Alta ep alto e lacate tetanusto iodnephes iros ecusa. So you've got this image of, you've got this basket, it's got gold finishings on the top, it's stuffed full of wool, and on top of it, the elacate, this is the distaff, this is this spindle, this is a pluperfect, this is from tanuo, so it needs to stretch out, or just a layout, I think, here. So, and on top of it was the distaff had been laid, the distaff having, so because you wrap wool around it, so perhaps laden with golden dark, violet dark. Eos is a violet, and the denef root is sort of darkness. So violet dark eros wool. So just to do that bit again. So, and on top of it, the distaff had been laid, full of, or perhaps laden with violet dark wool. Hesdatot den klismo, and she, this must be Helen, she sat on the klismos, this is the seat, klismos, and a footstool was under her feet. Now, posin here is the dative plural from pous. Autica de hege epesi posin erianen hecasta. Now, notice we've got posin. This is posin, notice the accent. This is the dative plural from pous. This is posin, which is the accusative from possis, meaning a husband. Totally different, but they look very similar. It's only an accent that separates them. So, but she, this is an imperfect here, I think. So she began to question her husband. She indeed began to question her husband with words, hecasta, on each matter. And that is the next section of book 4.